We got some bad news. Alex Singleton is out for the year with a torn ACL. Devastating blow. He is one of the best players on this defense. I could argue the second best player on this defense after PS2. And he is out for the year with a torn ACL, which no one saw coming. Even the coaching staff did not see coming. Because if you're wondering, where did this injury come from? You're right to wonder. Alex Singleton in week 3 against the Buccaneers played every single snap. Most of it on a torn ACL. That's the type of leader and mentality and grit that the Broncos are losing from their defense that you simply cannot replace. When they signed linebacker Kwon Alexander this morning, I didn't think of any injury because Singleton played every single snap. No one was on the injury list coming out of the game. So I thought, okay, well, maybe they're just not very happy with what they got out of Cody Barton, right? That was the only way I could kind of interpret that signing. And then when they signed Zach Cunningham, alarm bells started to go off. Uh-oh. Why are you signing two players at the same position? Someone's got to be injured. And 5 minutes later, the news dropped. Singleton, torn ACL, out for the year. So let's try and put the pieces together right now and figure out what life is going to be like for this Denver defense with Singleton out for the year. For starters, we're going to see a next man up with Cody Barton, probably taking on a much larger role. He had only played about half of the snaps all season long defensively. I expect that number to skyrocket. Justin Strnad, Welch, who was added shortly after roster cutdown day, longtime Packer. And then you got two veterans in Kwon Alexander and Zach Cunningham, who might be on like the express lane to get ready for week 4 against the Jets. So we're going to talk about what to expect from this defense and how you proceed without who's been the best, I wouldn't say the best player defensively, but one of the most consistent players defensively ever since he came over to Denver, which has now been 3 years. I mean, a special teamer from the Philadelphia Eagles that I wasn't really even convinced about being a full-time starting linebacker has led the team in tackles back-to-back seasons, and now in September, he is taken away from you for the rest of the year. So whenever news breaks, though, make sure you are subscribed. That way you do not miss a single thing. I kid you not, I filmed a short in the studio right before we were going to go film a video about, what's his face, Zach Cunningham getting signed. And then as I'm filming the short, I get the notification across the top that says Alex Singleton ... And I was like, I'm going to finish filming in my head, but I am terrified that that's about to say Alex Singleton is out for the year. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So let's talk a little bit about what happens next. Like I said a moment ago, I think Cody Barton is your initial replacement, right? Who is going to see a larger presence on the field, increase in snaps. It's going to be the guy that's been your number 2 inside linebacker, Barton, who I think so far this year has played serviceable. He hasn't had a whole lot on his plate. He's only played a little over half of the snaps, so he hasn't had too many opportunities to make big, exciting plays, but he also hasn't been a liability. I think the PFF rank pretty much sums up what we have seen so far from just 3 weeks, so we don't need to make too big of a headline out of it, which is he's been about average. Now, I do want to show Alex Singleton some love. The pinned comment on today's video is as follows: drop a 49 to wish him a speedy recovery. Hopefully he is back, and I'm confident that if anyone can kick a rehab's ass, it's a guy who played an entire football game on a torn ACL. So hopefully he is ready to roll week 1 next year. But yeah, show the guy some love. Drop your 49s down below. Now let's talk about the 2 practice squad additions that were made. Kwon Alexander, a 4th-round pick by the Buccaneers, who we talked about earlier this morning on our initial video. He has some familiarity with Sean Payton. He played for about a season and a half down in NOLA with the Saints, and we know Payton, he loves to kind of retread a little bit and bring back familiar faces and guys that he has worked with, so not surprised he was like the first phone call they made. And I didn't want to say this in the video this morning, but I did have a tiny sense of alarm bell because I was like, who brings a linebacker in for a workout when the team is practicing, a team being a Denver Broncos team, in West Virginia? Like, how dire must it be to fly him to White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, all for a workout. Like, something must be wrong if that's why you're bringing him in. But I just pushed to the side as, no, it's the NFL. Guys come in all the time. Here we are. Now, Alexander played a little over half of the year a season ago with the Steelers. Just a small, share of all the stats. 41 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, a sack, and a pass breakup. His last full season, though, would have been in 2022 with the Jets. He put together some really good numbers. I mean, he's been a solid playmaker. Forced fumbles littered around his career stat sheet. So some takeaways, some big oomph plays, some game-changing plays, which is what you want to see. Zach Cunningham, a second-round pick out of Vandy by the Texans. He started a long time for the Houston Texans. Then he went over to another AFC South team, the Titans. Last year, he was with the Eagles, started 10 games for them. The Eagles linebacker core last year was awful. A lot of their key guys from the Super Bowl left after that season in free agency, and Cunningham was brought in midway through to kind of patch the defense up a little bit. But similar to Alexander, tons of experience, 86 starts under his belt. Cunningham last year, 13 games with the Philadelphia, or 10 starts with the Eagles, 2 tackles for loss. Doesn't have quite as many oomph plays as Alexander does, but both guys have been kind of in and off the field with injuries and just waiting for their number to be called and the phone to ring to get signed to a team with an injury at the linebacker position. So, unfortunately, Singleton, like I said, out for the year. This is a bummer. I mean, if you're talking about a player that grew on a fan base immensely, it's got to be him. I mean, the way he stepped into that role initially next to Josie Jewell as like, hey, here's a guy who's probably just going to be a rotational, random Bronco, and then he blossoms into your back-to-back leading tackler and receives a nice contract extension. It sucks to see that this injury comes at this point of his career because he is a little bit of a late bloomer, but he is playing the absolute best football of his career right now. And it is cruel that the football gods, when he is at the top of the mountain, decide you're done, season's over. So hopefully he can make a quick recovery. Denver's defense, though, listen, it's not going to be as good without Singleton. The impact he has before the snap cannot be measured. Right? He is the green dot of this defense. He makes sure everyone is in the right spot. He is so important, and you can't quite quantify it, but you know it when you see it. And the coaching staff knows it, and this is going to keep Vance Joseph up at night, Sean Payton up at night. Losing Singleton is just an irreplaceable player, and hopefully Alexander and Cunningham can fill, and plus Cody Barton, maybe 75% of the shoes he has, because I don't see a way that you replace him altogether this year. Before we go, though, I do want to give a quick shout out to a few of our Blue and Orange Club members. Slap Yourself, I Don't Give a Buck, John E. Thank you guys so much for being such loyal supporters of the channel. If you want to get shout outs like these guys do throughout the entire 2024 season, during our watch parties, send in a $100 super chat if you can, and we'll toss your name on screen. If you're unable to super chat, not a problem at all. I do ask, though, that you just like the video. That's completely free. It really does help grow the channel. So that will do it for us on our second video today. Make sure to subscribe, though. That way you never miss a single thing when it comes to your Denver Broncos, who have a big game this Sunday in New York against the Jets. It's going to be a tough week of practice, just kind of putting Singleton's injury behind them, especially when you're on the road, you're on the East Coast. By the way, fun fact, this is the Broncos' 5th East Coast trip, meaning back-to-back games in Eastern time zone since 2015. And in those 5 trips, they have gone up until this year 6-4. So not too shabby, I would say, for a West Coast team, back-to-back weeks in Eastern time zone. So hopefully they can continue the winning streak and get to 500 with a win against the Jets.